Welcome to the Deep Sleep Library, a place where lost worlds, forgotten civilizations, and ancient mysteries drift gently into your mind. Tonight, we will journey back in time to explore Atlantis, the lost city beneath the waves. We will walk its streets, hear its whispers, and uncover the secrets of a civilization that rose to greatness and vanished forever. If you enjoy these stories, you can support our channel by liking this video, leaving a comment with your thoughts or favorite part, and subscribing so you never miss another journey into history. And don't forget to check out our other videos. There are many more lost worlds and hidden tales waiting to carry you into calm, immersive adventures. So, make yourself comfortable, relax, and let your mind drift as we begin tonight's journey into the past. Great wealth and extraordinary power. A civilization known as Atlantis. Plato introduces Atlantis not as a myth or legend, but as a true story passed down through generations. He attributes the tale to Solon, a real Athenian lawmaker who lived 2 centuries before Plato. Solon, according to the story, heard of Atlantis from Egyptian priests in the ancient city of Sais. They claimed that Atlantis once existed beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, in the great Atlantic Ocean. Was Plato recounting history? Was he teaching a moral lesson through allegory? Or was Atlantis something else entirely? A symbolic vision wrapped in the mystery of time? Scholars have debated this for centuries, yet the mystery remains unresolved. Plato wrote of Atlantis as a great island empire ruled by kings who descended from the sea god Poseidon. Their capital was a marvel of engineering, circular rings of land and water, linked by canals, with a great temple at its heart. The Atlanteans possessed grand fleets, vast armies, and technologies that seemed far beyond the civilizations known in Plato's day. And yet, with all their power came corruption. Greed grew, honor faded, and pride clouded wisdom. In a single cataclysmic night and day, Atlantis was said to be swallowed by the sea and vanished forever. Take a slow breath, in and out. Let the story carry you gently, like a calm tide. You are drifting now through time, deeper into the mystery. Chapter 2: The World of Ancient Greece. Before we journey deeper into the legend of Atlantis, we must drift gently into the world where its story was first spoken. The world of ancient Greece, where philosophy was born, where marble temples kissed the sky, and where myth and reality walked side by side. Imagine now the Aegean Sea at twilight. The last light of Helios, the sun god, fades across waters scattered with islands like jewels. Olive trees sway in the evening breeze, and distant hills cradle quiet villages made of stone. Travelers gather around small fires. Storytellers speak of heroes and forgotten ages. This was a world alive with imagination, yet also a world seeking truth. Here, history, myth, and philosophy intertwined like threads of a tapestry. Plato did not invent Atlantis in a vacuum. He lived in the aftermath of war, a time when Athens, once the crowning jewel of civilization, had suffered defeat in the long Peloponnesian War against Sparta. The city that had produced Socrates, drama, and democracy now wrestled with questions of power, morality, and decline. It was in this setting that Plato wrote his dialogues. Atlantis, he suggests, was once a mighty empire, but it fell not because of the gods, but because it lost its virtue. And in this way, the story of Atlantis became more than history. It became a warning. The ancient Greeks believed that beyond the familiar seas lay unknown worlds. Their maps faded into mystery at the edges, marked only with the inscription, "Here be wonders." To them, the ocean was not empty. It was alive with possibility, danger, and memory. The word they used for the ocean was okeanos, a vast, world-encircling river that bordered human existence. Beyond it lay ancient lands erased by time, perhaps even Atlantis. As you listen, let your breath steady and your thoughts drift, as though carried by a gentle tide. In the stillness of night, allow yourself to cross that ancient boundary, from the known world into the realm of forgotten civilizations. In the next chapter, we will return to Plato, this time to the dialogue where the story of Atlantis truly begins. A conversation passed down from priests of Egypt to the lawgiver Solon, to Plato's grandfather, and finally to us. Chapter 3, The Story of Critias and Timaeus. I did not discover the story of Atlantis by accident. I found it where it has always been found, inside the writings of Plato. But to understand Atlantis as Plato shared it, we must follow his words as he first presented them. Not as a myth, but as a story passed down through memory. The story appears inside two of Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. These are not books in the way we think of them today. They are written as conversations, living thoughts shared between friends and philosophers. So let us step inside that ancient setting and listen. Imagine with me, we are in Athens more than 2,000 years ago. The sun is low over the stone houses. The great city is calm. Inside a quiet courtyard sits a small group of men, philosophers, statesmen, thinkers. They have gathered for a peaceful evening of discussion. Among them is Socrates, the great teacher of Athens. Beside him is Timaeus, a philosopher from the city of Locri. Another man sits near them, older, quiet, thoughtful Critias. And somewhere outside this peaceful gathering, history waits for someone to speak the forgotten name of Atlantis. In Plato's dialogue, Socrates asks his friends a simple question. Tell me a story of the ancient past. Tell me of a great people and of a city worth remembering. Timaeus thinks and then turns to Critias. Critias, he says, you once spoke of an ancient tale, something passed down to you, a story not from Greece, but from Egypt. A story of a great city that vanished long ago. Do you still remember it? Critias nods slowly. Yes, he says. I remember that story. My grandfather told it to me when I was a boy, and he heard it from Solon, the wise lawgiver of Athens, who heard it from priests in Egypt. They said it was a true story, the story of a powerful kingdom that once tried to conquer the world. A kingdom that existed 9,000 years ago, and they called it Atlantis. He pauses and the group grows silent. The night air is still. Somewhere in the distance a lyre plays. In this calm, ancient evening, Critias begins to speak, and the story of Atlantis enters history for the first time. Critias tells how Solon, a respected Athenian statesman, traveled to Egypt many years earlier. Egypt was already ancient then, far older than Greece. Its priests kept long histories, carved in temple walls and written on papyrus scrolls. Their memories reached far beyond the wars of Greece, far beyond even the age of Egyptian pharaohs. Solon went there seeking wisdom, and what he found shocked him. One day, Solon was speaking with a priest in the temple of Sais. The priest showed him ancient inscriptions, records of floods, wars, and civilizations that had risen and fallen, long before Greece was ever built. Solon, said the priest, you Greeks think of yourselves as old, but you are all like children. You know nothing of the past. Your histories speak only of a few lifetimes. But there were ages before yours, many ages, when great nations rose and fell. One of these nations was Atlantis. The priest pointed west, beyond the great sea. There once was an island, larger than Libya and Asia together. It lay beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what you call the Strait of Gibraltar. Atlantis was blessed with rich lands, powerful kings, and mighty fleets. But in a single day and night of misfortune, the island sank into the sea, and its name was lost to time. Solon wrote down everything he learned, planning to turn it into a great poem, but he never finished it. Years later, his notes found their way to Critias' family. Critias heard the story as a child, and now, as an old man sitting with Socrates and Timaeus, he was ready to share it at last. Critias leans forward and says to his friends, "If you truly wish to hear of ancient power and ancient ruin, of a city that fell because of its pride, then I will tell you about Atlantis. I will tell you what Solon learned and what the priests remembered, a true story of the distant past." And so he begins. For me, as I read these ancient words, something seems clear. Plato did not write Atlantis as a fantasy. He treats it as inherited history, told through generations. Whether we believe it today or not, he speaks of it as something once real. But I also feel something else, something deeper. It is as if the story of Atlantis was not only about a lost island. It was also about what happens to a great civilization when it forgets wisdom and falls into greed. It becomes a story about human nature. As Critias speaks in Plato's dialogue, you can almost hear the warning in his voice. Great powers rise. Great powers fall. Atlantis fell, and someday other empires may fall the same way. Before we go forward, pause with me for a moment. Close your eyes if you like. Picture that small group in Athens, sitting beneath the quiet stars. A soft breeze moves through the courtyard. A small lamp flickers. Those men did not know that their conversation would echo across thousands of years. But it did. From that single moment, the name of Atlantis began its long journey to us. From Plato to scholars to explorers to dreamers, to stories told around fires, to books filled with maps of lost worlds. And now, tonight to you, the memory of Atlantis survived because it carried something powerful, a mystery that refuses to fade. A city once said to be more advanced than any of its time. A city lost beneath the sea. Was it ever real, or was it a message hidden in story? To answer that, we must continue. In the next chapter, I will tell you about Atlantis itself, its land, its people, and how it rose to power. But remember what Critias said. Atlantis did not fall because of nature alone. It fell because of the hearts of men. The story of Atlantis begins not with its fall, but with its land, its shape, its mountains, its rivers, and its heart. To understand why Atlantis became so powerful, we must first understand the land that formed it. Atlantis was said to lie beyond the Pillars of Heracles, which we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, the gateway between the Mediterranean Sea and the open Atlantic Ocean. Beyond that narrow passage, across waters once thought endless, lay a vast island, Atlantis. Plato wrote that it was larger than Libya and Asia combined, though in those days those names referred only to small regions, not the continents we know now. So what he really meant was, Atlantis was huge. Close your eyes for a moment and picture it. A wide island rises from the sea, where mountains stretch along the northern edge, sharp and rocky like the spine of some sleeping dragon. Below them spreads a great, fertile plain, flat and rich with dark soil. Rivers run through it like silver threads. Forests rise in every direction, and hidden springs flow from the earth, some warm, some cold. Fruit trees grow in every valley, and animals wander freely. Horses, bulls, and even elephants. Yes, elephants. Plato makes special note of this, as if to say, Atlantis was a land of wonders, a land where nature was generous. At the center of the island stood a hill, not the tallest but the most sacred. This hill was the heart of Atlantis. From here the city grew. But this was no ordinary city. It was a marvel of design, engineering, and imagination. The Atlanteans shaped their capital in perfect circles, a symbol of harmony and balance. Imagine it, at the very top of the hill, a shining temple to Poseidon stood. Around that hill were 3 circular rings of land. Between them flowed 2 rings of water, cut into the earth by human hands. Bridges crossed the rings. Canals connected everything to the Great Sea. Ships moved directly into the city, gliding through the waterways like quiet shadows. A huge harbor lay beyond, filled with merchants from distant lands. The walls of the city were forged from metals that caught the sun. Orichalcum was a mysterious red-gold metal. It was said to glow like fire and was so rare that it was used only for sacred buildings. Some believe it was an ancient alloy now lost to time. Others say it was symbolic, meant to show that Atlantis shone brighter than the rest of the world. Beyond the walls stood vast gardens, a hippodrome for horse races, docks, warehouses, temples, and statues of gold. Everywhere, the signs of a rich and advanced civilization. Everywhere, order, structure, design, power. The Atlanteans did not build by chance. They carved their world with purpose. But who were these people? And how did such a city even come to exist? To understand Atlantis, we must return to the beginning, to the first Atlantean king, and the day the sea god Poseidon fell in love. Chapter 5: The Rise of Atlantis. Every great story has a beginning, and the story of Atlantis begins not with war or conquest, but with love. Long before Atlantis became a mighty empire, before its walls were built or its harbors filled with ships, the island was wild and untouched, home only to quiet hills, forests, and streams. Then came Poseidon, god of the sea. The legends say he found a mortal woman living on the island. Her name was Cleito. She was beautiful and strong, the daughter of Evenor, one of the first men to walk the island. Poseidon saw her and fell deeply in love. To protect Cleito, he shaped the land around her, raising hills and cutting circles of water around the central mountain. There he made a home where no stranger could reach her. Together, Poseidon and Cleito had 10 sons. These sons became the first kings of Atlantis. The island was divided into 10 regions, each ruled by one son. But the eldest son, Atlas, ruled over all. From him, the island took its name, Atlantis, the island of Atlas. Atlas ruled from the great hill where the capital city stood. On that sacred hill, Poseidon built a shining temple. Inside stood a towering statue of the sea god riding a great chariot pulled by winged horses. Around the statue were golden dolphins and sea creatures, frozen in metal. The walls were lined with precious metals, and the floor was made of rare stone. This temple was the heart of Atlantis. In the early years, the people of Atlantis lived simply. They honored the laws of their father Poseidon. There was no greed, no hunger, no war. The land gave them everything they needed: grain, fruit, animals, herbs, and fish. They built homes of stone and wood, and they worked together. But as time passed, the Atlanteans grew wiser and stronger. They learned to build with skill, to shape metal, to farm the land more efficiently, to command horses and ships. Deep springs gave them fresh water. Rich soil gave them endless crops. Mountains gave them metal and fine stone. Soon they built roads, bridges, and ports. They dug canals so large that entire fleets could travel through them. They created massive farms and raised thousands of cattle. Blacksmiths forged weapons and armor. Writers carved stories and laws into bronze tablets. Atlantis was not just a city, it became a kingdom. And then it became more. Under the rule of Atlas and his brothers, Atlantis began to grow beyond the island. They built ships and crossed the seas. They explored new lands and formed alliances. They sent envoys to distant kingdoms. Over time, their navy became the largest in the world. They did not conquer at first. They simply grew quietly and patiently. But power has a way of waking something inside the human heart. A hunger, a desire to reach further. And so Atlantis began to rise not just in strength but in ambition. In those early years, the kings still met at the temple of Poseidon every 6 years to renew their sacred oath. They sacrificed bulls, offered prayers, and swore to rule with honor and justice. They promised to never harm the weak, never betray a friend, and never break the laws of the gods. But oaths, like kingdoms, can be broken. Even now, in these early days of Atlantis, we can already feel it. A shadow forming behind the light. A trace of destiny waiting at the edge of the sea. For now, Atlantis is a land of peace and growth. But soon it will seek to rule the world. In the next chapter, we will see Atlantis at the height of its power, and the first cracks that would lead to its fall. Atlantis did not rise slowly. It rose like a storm, fast, strong, and unstoppable. The 10 kingdoms of Atlantis, once peaceful and humble, now stood united under a single purpose: to rule. The capital city, with its glowing metals and perfect circles, became the center of the world. But beyond it, across the great island, other cities grew, each one skilled in farming, building, sailing, metalwork, or trade. The land was alive with movement. Along the wide plains, farms stretched across the earth. Wheat, olives, fruit, and vegetables grew in endless supply. The soil was so rich that harvests never failed. The people had more than enough to eat. Along the coasts, harbors were built. Ships lined the docks, carrying goods to far places. Trade flowed in and out like the tides. From distant lands came spices, rare wood, silk, and strange animals. In return, Atlantis sent metal, oil, wine, tools, and knowledge. Life in Atlantis was not simple anymore. It was rich, it was busy, it was strong, but it was their army and navy that made them feared. Plato wrote that the Atlanteans trained on a huge plain near the heart of the island. There, they built training camps, stables, and war schools. Their army grew so large that other nations trembled when they heard the name Atlantis. According to the records, Atlantis commanded 60,000 chariots, 120,000 horses, 1,200 warships, over 1 million soldiers. Some say these numbers are too large to be true, but even if they were smaller, one thing is clear: Atlantis had the greatest military the world had ever seen, and their ships ruled the sea. No fleet could match them. Their warships were fast, heavy, and built to crush enemy vessels. They used powerful bronze rams to smash through hulls. Their archers and spear throwers rained death from above. With this power, Atlantis began to expand beyond its island. They crossed into North Africa, taking lands from Egypt to Libya. They moved into Europe, ruling over parts of Spain, France, and Italy. One nation after another was either conquered or forced to bow. Atlantis was no longer just a great city. It was an empire. But power like this does something to the heart. It changes people. The kings of Atlantis had once ruled with justice, but now they began to hunger for more. More land, more gold, more control. And soon they would turn against the last people who still stood free. A small city, a brave city, a city that refused to surrender. Ancient Athens. This is where the Great War begins. And this war will not only decide the fate of Athens, but the fate of Atlantis itself. Because before Atlantis could fall, it had to reach the height of its pride. In the next chapter, the cracks begin to show. The empire will begin to rot from the inside. Chapter 7: The Corruption of Atlantis. Power is a dangerous gift. Can build, but it can also destroy. In Atlantis, power first brought greatness, but soon it brought darkness. In the beginning, the people of Atlantis were good and fair. They followed the old laws. They honored Poseidon, who gave them life, land, and wisdom. Their kings ruled with justice. Their people lived in peace. But as time passed, their hearts began to change. Greed crept in like a silent thief. Pride followed. Then came jealousy, cruelty, and hunger for more. The kings still ruled, but they no longer thought of their people first. They thought only of their own power. Atlantis grew rich, too rich. Gold filled their temples. Jewels shone on their clothing. Their palaces became taller, grander, and filled with treasure. But with every new luxury, they lost a piece of their soul. They began to break the sacred laws of Poseidon. Laws that had once held their world together were ignored. The kings lied. They stole. They sent armies to conquer peaceful lands. They enslaved weaker nations. They believed they were above justice. The priests begged them to stop. They warned, "You have turned from the path. Your hearts have become hard. If you do not return to wisdom, if you do not remember the gods, this land will be punished." But the rulers laughed. They no longer believed anything could harm them. Atlantis had once been a land of balance between nature and man, between spirit and power. But now that balance was lost. Nature began to turn against them. Storms grew stronger. Earth trembled more often. The signs were clear, but the Atlanteans did not listen. And so their corruption spread. Their armies marched across distant lands, taking everything they wanted. Kingdom after kingdom fell to them, but not everyone surrendered. A small but brave city stood in their path. Athens. Athens fought not for power, but for freedom. It was a city of courage, of philosophers, warriors, and thinkers. They did not fear Atlantis. They stood against its growing empire and refused to bow. And for the first time, Atlantis was stopped, defeated not by a greater army, but by greater spirit. This was the final warning, but Atlantis ignored it. They chose pride over wisdom. They chose conquest over peace. They chose destruction, and soon destruction would choose them. Chapter 8: The War with Athens. The drums of war shook the world. Atlantis had sent a massive army across the sea to conquer Greece and all the lands beyond it. They believed no force could stop them, not after all they had already taken. Their ships filled the horizon like a moving wall of wood and bronze. Their soldiers marched in numbers too great to count. Their chariots thundered across the plains. But waiting for them stood Athens. Athens was not a rich city. It did not have great walls or endless armies. But it had something Atlantis had lost: courage, unity, and honor. Its people believed in freedom. They believed in fighting for what is right, not just for power. The Atlanteans attacked with confidence. They thought they would win quickly, but Athens did not break. Again and again they pushed the invaders back. The Athenian soldiers fought side by side, shield against shield, never giving ground. The war lasted many days. The sea battles were fierce. The land battles were brutal. The armies of Atlantis were stronger, but the Athenians fought with heart. Then came the great turning point. During a massive battle on land, the Athenians set a trap. They pretended to retreat, drawing the Atlantean army into a narrow valley. When Atlantis entered, thinking victory was theirs, Athens attacked from both sides. The valley became a prison of spears and shields. The Atlantean army was surrounded. Their soldiers could not escape. Horses panicked. Commanders fell. The army of Atlantis, so proud, so sure of victory, was broken. Then, Athens turned to the sea. Under the cover of night, Athenian ships struck the Atlantean fleet. Fire spread across the water. Ships burned and sank into the dark depths. For the first time, the empire of Atlantis tasted defeat. Word spread across the world. Atlantis had been beaten. The kings of Atlantis were furious. The loss crushed their pride. They had believed they were chosen by the gods to rule over all nations. Now they were humiliated by a smaller, poorer city. But instead of accepting the truth, instead of turning back to wisdom, they chose revenge. They swore to return stronger and crush Athens forever. They did not know it yet, but the gods had already made their judgment. The fall of Atlantis had begun. Chapter 9: The Punishment of Atlantis. The defeat in the war with Athens shook Atlantis. But instead of learning from it, the rulers of Atlantis became even more proud, more angry, and more cruel. They blamed everyone but themselves. They blamed fate, they blamed Athens, and they even blamed the gods. But the gods had been watching all along. For many years, they had given Atlantis time to change. Time to return to wisdom and justice. Time to remember honor. But Atlantis had ignored every warning. And now the time for mercy was over. One night, as the kings of Atlantis gathered in the great hall, the sky above the island filled with strange light. Thunder rolled though no storm could be seen. The earth trembled under their feet. The priests ran to the temple of Poseidon. They fell to their knees in fear. The chief priest cried out, "The gods have judged Atlantis. You have broken the sacred laws. You have turned to greed and cruelty. Now this land will fall." Outside, the people panicked. Animals fled. Fires broke out. The sea began to rise. The mountains shook. The once great island trembled like a dying beast. Still, some refused to believe it. They said the gods could not destroy them. They said Atlantis would last forever. But deep down, the truth was clear. Atlantis was falling because of its own sins. The punishment was not just for the kings. It was for the whole nation, for every man who chose greed over kindness, every leader who chose power over justice, every soldier who followed corrupt orders without question. Poseidon, the god who had once given Atlantis life, wealth, and beauty, had turned away from them. The bond was broken. The protection was gone. The destruction had begun. But this was only the first night of the end. The true disaster, the one that would erase Atlantis from the world, was still to come. In the next chapter, we will witness the final day of Atlantis, the great cataclysm that sent it into the sea forever. Chapter 10: The Sinking of Atlantis. The final day of Atlantis arrived quietly at first. The sun rose over the golden city, gleaming on the metal walls, the canals, and the temple of Poseidon. The people went about their lives, unaware that the world itself was about to turn against them. The kings gathered in their palace, proud and arrogant. They did not feel fear. They did not feel regret. Their armies were ready. Their ships were armed. Their treasures were stacked high. They believed they were untouchable. But the gods had decided. Nature itself became the instrument of their judgment. The earth began to tremble. Mountains shook. Rivers overflowed their banks. The ocean, restless and angry, began to rise around the island. Cracks appeared in the walls of the city. Canals overflowed. Bridges collapsed. Fish from the sea filled the streets as water poured in. The people screamed, running through streets that were once orderly, now chaotic and drowning. Volcanoes, buried under the mountains, erupted. Smoke and fire filled the sky. Lava flowed down the hillsides, consuming forests and homes. The air was thick with ash and heat. The ground split open, swallowing temples and statues, palaces and towers. The land itself was breaking apart. Ships tried to flee, but the waters were merciless. Waves as tall as mountains crashed over the harbors. Ships sank, carrying soldiers, traders, and families into the dark sea. Nothing could survive the fury of the ocean now unleashed. In the end, the island that had once seemed eternal, the perfect city of Poseidon, was gone. Only the deepest ocean remained, hiding the ruins beneath its waves. Atlantis had vanished, not in one place, but in the entire island. The proud city, the mighty empire, the people who believed themselves above the gods, all swallowed by water, fire, and earthquake. Yet even in destruction, the story lived. The tale of Atlantis, told by Critias to Timaeus, preserved by Plato, and passed down through thousands of years, survived. It remained a memory of human ambition and human failure, a reminder of what happens when power turns to pride, when greed replaces wisdom, and when humanity ignores the lessons of the past. And so, Atlantis rests beneath the waves, a lost city, a dream of the past. Perhaps one day, some trace of it will rise again in story, in imagination, in the hearts of those who listen to the whispers of the ocean. For now, it sleeps, quiet, deep, and eternal, beneath the waters of the Atlantic, waiting to be remembered once more. If you enjoyed this journey through Atlantis, you can help our library grow by liking this video, leaving a comment with your thoughts or favorite part of the story, and subscribing to the Deep Sleep Library so we can continue exploring lost worlds and ancient mysteries together, and check out our channel for more such content. Even a small click lets the story, and many more like it, reach others who love to drift into history as you do tonight.